On the 14th of July in the year 12,862, a single eye of polished glass and frozen silicon turned its gaze toward a coordinate of absolute nothingness. This was the 3-Eye Atlas projector, a lonely sentinel drifting in the silent periphery of a dead solar system, its sensors tuned to the faint dying whispers of the deep cosmos. It did not possess a heart to flutter or a mind to wander. It was merely a cold extension of the great human desire to witness the inevitable. At precisely 3 minutes past the hour of midnight, the darkness of the abyss was punctured. A single, needle-thin point of light arrived from a distance of 4 quadrillion miles, a ghost of an event that had already transpired centuries ago. This was the terminal signature, the final transmission of a star system surrendering its last embers to the encroaching dark. The universe is not a garden to be tended, nor is it a temple built for our adoration. It is a ruthless machine of inexorable precision, a high-pressure furnace that converts the complexity of life and the majesty of suns into the flat grey ash of entropy. When this distant star unravelled, there was no sound. There was no celestial choir to sing of its passing, no divine architect to pause the motion of the spheres in a moment of silence. There was only the calculation of gravity and the cold demand of thermodynamics. The furnace of the void does not notice the life it consumes. It treats the incineration of 1 trillion souls with the same indifference it grants to the drifting of a single grain of dust. To the cosmos, a catastrophe is merely a shift in the ledger, a minor adjustment in the distribution of heat. Imagine the stellar core as a titanic engine, a mechanism of such vast proportions that its internal pressures transcend the limits of our imagination. For billions of years, this engine laboured against the crushing weight of its own existence, holding the abyss at bay through the violent fusion of primordial atoms. It was a symphony of light, a tapestry of radiation that warmed the faces of whatever creatures might have evolved in its glow. But every machine has a terminal hour. Every engine must eventually exhaust its fuel. When the iron began to poison the heart of that star, the equilibrium was shattered. The mechanical balance that had sustained an entire solar system for eons tilted toward oblivion. In a fraction of a second, the outward pressure failed, and the ruthless hand of gravity slammed the door shut. The collapse was a masterclass in the cruelty of the physical world. The atmosphere of entire planets was stripped away in an instant, not by a vengeful god, but by the simple, mindless expansion of a dying shell. The oceans boiled into the void and the mountains crumbled into white-hot vapour, yet the machine of the universe did not stutter. It merely calculated a new reality. The 3-Eye Atlas projector captured this transition with the detachment of a ledger keeper. It recorded the flash, the sudden spike in gamma radiation, and the long, slow decay of the remnant. It saw the signature of a world ending and filed it away as a series of electronic pulses, a set of coordinates, and a date on a calendar that no living creature would ever again have cause to read. We often imagine the void as a silent, empty hall, but it is more akin to a crushing sea of invisible forces. It is a place where the laws of physics act as the gears of an ancient, unfeeling clock. In this mechanical reality, there is no room for empathy. The light of the dying star travelled through the abyss for 500 years before it reached the lens of the projector, a messenger bearing news of a tragedy that was already ancient history. By the time we see the flame, the wick has been cold for half a millennium. This is the scale paradox of our existence. We live in the echoes of a symphony that has already finished its final movement. We are the witnesses of a ghost story written in the language of light and shadow. Consider the furnace of the sun. We see it as a source of warmth and life, a benevolent titan that guards our world. But to the universe, the sun is a ticking bomb, a temporary deviation from the natural state of cold, dark equilibrium. The mechanism of stellar evolution is a cycle of ignition and decay, a process that views the birth of planets as a mere byproduct, and the emergence of consciousness as a flicker of static in the signal. The terminal signature detected on that July night was a reminder that every structure we build, every memory we cherish, and every civilization we forge is written upon the surface of a machine that is programmed to eventually erase it. The cosmos does not hate us, it simply does not know that we are here. As the data from the 3-Eye Atlas streamed back across the empty light years, it traced the silhouette of a remnant, a white dwarf star surrounded by a shroud of cooling gas. This was the corpse of a system, the skeletal remains of a once vibrant family of worlds. The void had swallowed the heat, the light, and the history of that place, leaving behind only the cold precision of the debris. There is a certain melancholic beauty in this absolute lack of concern. The universe is honest in its brutality. It does not promise eternity, nor does it offer a sanctuary from the inexorable march of time. It merely continues. It expands, it cools, and it waits for the next star to reach its terminal signature. The silence that followed the flash was perhaps the most profound part of the recording. After the cataclysm, there was nothing but the steady rhythmic pulse of the vacuum. The machine of the universe had moved on to the next calculation. The death of a star is a massive event on a human scale, a tragedy of cosmic proportions, yet in the grand tapestry of the eons, it is less than the blink of an eye. We are small, fragile things living in the gaps between the gears of a massive, unyielding engine. Our role is not to command the machine, nor to beg it for mercy, for the machine has no ears to hear. Our role is to be the witness, to look into the abyss and say, with a voice that will one day be silenced, that we saw the light before it failed. On July 14th, 12,862, the 3-Eye Atlas projector completed its task. It sent the final packet of data into the dark and powered down its primary sensors to conserve energy for the next millennium of waiting. The distant remnant faded from its view, becoming just one more cold ember in a sky filled with the ghosts of dead suns. The void remained, vast and primordial, a silent sea that will eventually claim every star, every galaxy, and every thought. In the face of such overwhelming indifference, our only defiance is to keep watching, to keep recording, and to find meaning in the very fact that for a few brief moments, we were part of the mechanism that dared to look back at itself. The signature was recorded, the event was documented. The universe continued its work, unblinking and eternal, as the last traces of the light were devoured by the eternal dark. To understand our place in the cosmos, we must first discard the comforting illusion of the universe as a sanctuary. We often speak of the stars as if they were lanterns lit for our benefit, or the vacuum as a womb from which we were born. But as we move deeper into the epoch of our own understanding, the evidence suggests a far more harrowing reality. The universe is not a cradle. It is an unfeeling engine of mathematical necessity. It is a vast, self-sustaining mechanism that operates with the clinical indifference of a slaughterhouse. This is the engine of necessity, a structure where every event from the collision of galaxies to the quiet decay of a single atom is the result of rigid, unyielding calculations that do not recognize the concept of mercy. In this cold machine, the laws of physics are not mere guidelines or observations. They are the iron gears of a system that permits no deviation. We find ourselves living within the narrow tolerances of a high-pressure furnace, where the fundamental forces of nature act as the primary drive. Gravity is not a welcoming embrace that keeps our feet on the ground. It is the crushing weight of the machine, a force that seeks to collapse all matter into the smallest possible point of density. Electromagnetism is not the spark of inspiration. It is the tension of the spring, the exchange of energy that keeps the pistons of the cosmos in perpetual motion. The most terrifying aspect of this machinery is the second law of thermodynamics. In the narrative of the human experience, we might call it the passage of time, or the tragedy of loss. But to the engine of necessity, it is simply the executioner. It is the inexorable directive that energy must always move from a state of concentration to a state of diffusion. It is the silent decree that every structure must eventually unravel, every star must eventually exhaust its fuel, and every memory must be surrendered to the void. entropy is the toll that the universe extracts for the privilege of existence. It is the mechanical friction that ensures no movement is free and no state of order is permanent. In the eyes of the machine, the birth of a child and the death of a supernova are identical transactions, a temporary reorganization of matter that will inevitably be reclaimed by the abyss. When we look into the deep field of space, we are looking into the heart of this furnace. The stars are not divine beings. They are sites of violent mechanical efficiency. They are spheres of plasma where the engine of necessity grinds atoms together with such ferocity that they ignite, releasing a torrent of radiation that we perceive as light. But this light is merely a byproduct of the process, a waste product of the cosmic metabolism. The machine does not burn for the sake of illumination. It burns because the mathematics of mass and pressure leave it no other choice. It is a process of ignition and decay that has been repeating for billions of years, indifferent to whether there is an eye to see it or a mind to contemplate it. Within the intricate workings of these gears, there are moments where the machinery produces something unexpected. In the cooling shadows of the planetary remnants that orbit these stellar furnaces, complex chemical combinations begin to emerge. To a sentient observer, this appears as the miracle of life. But within the framework of the cold machine, these combinations are better understood as glitches. They are rare, temporary eddies in the great current of entropy. When molecules align in such a way that they begin to replicate, they are essentially finding a way to briefly trap energy and stave off the encroaching dark. We are the products of these chemical errors. Our consciousness is a flicker of static in the ground signal, a momentary resonance in the gears that has somehow become aware of the machine that contains it. These glitches do not suggest that the engine has a soul. On the contrary, the rarity and fragility of life only serve to highlight the ruthless nature of the mechanism. The same laws of chemistry that allow a strand of genetic code to assemble are the same laws that will eventually demand its dissolution. The universe does not pause its work to accommodate the emergence of life. It continues to grind forward, oblivious to the fact that its own internal friction has produced a witness. The machine does not hate us, for hatred requires a capacity for feeling that the void does not possess. It simply does not know that we are here. We are like the moss that grows on the underside of a massive industrial turbine, small, fragile, and utterly inconsequential to the function of the device. As we contemplate the scale paradox, we realize that our entire history is written in the margins of a ledger that is being constantly erased. The abyss does not just surround us, it is the destination toward which all paths lead. The engine of necessity is programmed for the eventual cessation of all movement. In the far-flung future, when the last star has reached its terminal signature and the last black hole has evaporated into a thin mist of hawking radiation, the machine will finally reach its state of perfect equilibrium. This is the heat death of the universe, the moment when the executioner has completed its task and the gears finally cease to turn. In that state of ultimate oblivion, there will be no light, no heat, and no record that the glitches ever existed. The beauty of this perspective, if one can find it, lies in its absolute honesty. The cosmos offers no false promises of eternal life or cosmic justice. It provides a tapestry of events that are governed by nothing but the silent precision of the laws of nature. To be a witness to this process is to occupy a position of profound, albeit temporary significance. We are the portion of the machine that has, through a series of improbable mathematical accidents, developed the ability to look back at the gears and understand their motion. We are the consciousness of the furnace, the part of the fire that realizes it is burning. Our defiance in the face of this mechanical indifference is not to try and break the machine, for the laws of physics are unbreakable. Our defiance is to observe, to document, and to find meaning in the very fact that we are a part of the mechanism that can comprehend its own eventual end. We inhabit the epoch of light, a brief window of time between the primordial ignition and the final decay. This is the era where the engine is at its most active, where the friction is at its peak, and where the glitches are most complex. We are the remnants of a process that is as beautiful as it is terrifying, a symphony of mathematical necessity played out across the infinite stage of the void. As the eons pass, the engine will continue its work. It will devour the galaxies, it will unravel the stars, and it will eventually silence every voice that has ever dared to speak into the dark. But for this moment, the light is still burning, the gears are still turning, and we, the unintended byproducts of the cosmic machinery, are here to witness the grandeur of the abyss. The universe is a cold, silent sentinel of its own laws, and we are the brief, bright flame that dares to illuminate the interior of the machine before the darkness returns. We are the children of necessity, born from the furnace and destined for the void, yet in our fleeting existence we hold a mirror up to the eternal dark and demand that it be seen. This is the engine of necessity. This is the ruthless beauty of the cosmos. This is the truth that remains when all our stories have been stripped away. Within the architecture of this absolute truth, we find that the engine of necessity is not merely composed of vast celestial bodies and the yawning voids between them. It is constructed from a finite set of fundamental components, a blueprint of matter that dictates the behavior of everything from the ignition of a star to the pulse of a human heart. To understand the machine, we must examine its individual gears. One such gear, hidden within the salt of the seas and the forgotten corners of the earth, is a substance of singular malice and transformative power. It is the 35th element in the cosmic ledger, a corrosive sentinel that serves as a bridge between the inert and the volatile. In the early 19th century, during the years 1825 and 1826, the silent machinery of the universe allowed two separate witnesses to peel back the veil. In the laboratories of Europe, working independently and unaware of each other, Antoine Jérôme Ballard and Carl Loeg began to isolate a shadow. They were not looking for a miracle, but for a component of the world that had remained nameless since the primordial cooling of the crust. Ballard, working with the concentrated residues of seawater in Montpellier, and Loeg, examining mineral springs in Heidelberg, both encountered a liquid that defied the common expectations of the era. It was a substance of deep, bruised crimson, a dark blood that seemed to emanate a suffocating vapour. The name bestowed upon this element was bromine, derived from the ancient Greek word for stench. It was an apt title for a material that seemed to signal its presence with a choking, offensive odour, a chemical warning issued by the machine itself. Unlike most elements which exist as solids or gases at the temperatures we inhabit, bromine is one of only two elements on the periodic table that persists as a liquid in its natural state. It is a dense, heavy fluid that seeks the lowest point, a pool of concentrated potential waiting for a reason to react. To observe it is to witness a part of the machine that is perpetually restless, always on the verge of unravelling the structures around it. Imagine, if you will, the abstract ladder of our understanding. At the lowest rung, we see a simple pool of red liquid sitting in a glass vial. But as we climb, we begin to perceive its true nature through metaphor. Bromine is like a gear with exceptionally sharp, jagged teeth. While other elements might have smooth edges that allow them to slide past one another in relative peace, this element is covered in hooks and barbs, perpetually seeking a connection to latch onto. It is an electron seeker, a predator in the subatomic world. In the cold, mechanical logic of the universe, bromine does not simply exist. It demands to be integrated. It pulls electrons from its neighbours with a ruthless efficiency, a process we call oxidation, but which the machine experiences as a necessary adjustment of energy. This corrosive quality is the hallmark of its function. When we speak of corrosion, we often think of decay, but in the context of the universal engine, it is merely the rearrangement of parts. Bromine is a catalyst for change, a liquid fire that can dissolve the bonds of organic life and metallic structures alike. It is a reminder that the machine is not just a static construction of cold iron and dead stone, but a shifting, churning cauldron of chemical necessity. The stench that Ballard and Loeg first encountered was the smell of the machine working, the byproduct of an element that is so eager to engage with the world that it begins to tear apart the very air it inhabits. In the grand tapestry of the cosmos, the discovery of atomic number 35 represents a moment where the witness began to decipher the assembly manual of the abyss. For eons, this element had existed in the brine of the oceans, a silent participant in the slow erosion of the continents. It was part of the inexorable decay that ensures no structure remains eternal. By identifying it, Ballard and Loig were not creating something new. They were simply labelling a specific bolt in the furnace. They were recognising a component that had been operating since the first billion years of the Earth's history. The ruthless machine of the universe does not care for the comfort of its inhabitants. Bromine is toxic to the very life forms that discovered it. Its vapours can sear the lungs, and its liquid state can devour the flesh. This is the paradox of our existence. We are made of the same materials that are fundamentally indifferent to our survival. We are a delicate assembly of gears and pulleys, fragile and temporary, built from elements that, in their pure form, would seek to unmake us. The very chemical properties that allow for the complexity of our nervous systems are the same properties that, in a slightly different configuration, lead to our oblivion. As we look at this dark red liquid, we see a reflection of the cosmic order. It is volatile, meaning it is always escaping into the void, turning from a heavy fluid into a choking gas at the slightest provocation. It represents the instability of matter, the way the machine is constantly trying to reach a lower state of energy, to spill out and disperse across the infinite dark. In the early 19th century, this was a scientific curiosity, a new entry in the catalogues of chemistry. But from our perspective of melancholic optimism, it is a profound realization of our place. We are observers of a system that is designed for efficiency, not for us. The discovery of bromine was an act of mapping the abyss. It showed that the universe is not a mystery of divine whims, but a mechanism of predictable, albeit terrifying, laws. Every drop of that stinking red fluid follows the same mathematical directives that govern the orbits of the planets. There is no escape from the chemistry of the void. We are the unintended byproducts of these reactions, the ghosts in the machine who have learned to name the parts that will eventually consume them. The gear with the sharp teeth continues to turn. Whether it is being used in the modern epoch to flame-proof our surroundings, or to capture images on old photographic plates, bromine remains a constant, a sentinel of the periodic table. It is a reminder of the primordial furnace from which all things were forged. In the silence of the laboratory, as the red vapours rise, we see the breath of the cosmos. It is a cold, mechanical breath, devoid of sentiment, yet beautiful in its absolute precision. We are the witnesses to this corrosive beauty, the ones who stand at the edge of the abyss and describe the teeth of the gears as they grind us into the dust of the eons. This is the liquid history of the universe, written in the dark blood of an element that knows nothing of us, yet defines the very fabric of our reality. But as we descend further into the basement of the periodic table, the heavy, suffocating weight of bromine gives way to something far more elusive. We leave behind the tangible, the liquid that stains the hands and sears the throat, and we enter the realm of the phantoms. If the universe is a machine, then most of its components are forged from iron, carbon and silicon. Sturdy, enduring gears that grind through the eons with a stubborn refusal to vanish. Yet, every machine has its anomalies, its fleeting sparks, and its ghosts. Among these phantoms, there is one that stands as the ultimate testament to the instability of matter. This is atomic number 85. For decades, there was a jagged hole in our map of the cosmos. Scientists peered into the architecture of the atom, identifying the patterns and the symmetries that govern reality, but they found a vacant seat at the table of the halogens. It was a missing note in the cosmic symphony, a silence where there should have been a voice. It was not until the year 1940 in the burgeoning laboratories of Berkeley that this ghost was finally summoned into the light. 3 men, Dale Corson, Kenneth Mackenzie and Emilio Segre, utilised the immense power of the cyclotron to bombard bismuth with alpha particles. essentially forcing the universe to reveal a secret it had kept hidden since the primordial ignite. They named it astatine, derived from the ancient word for unstable. It was an admission of defeat. They had found the element, but they knew they could never truly possess it. Astatine is the great contradiction of the physical world. It is a halogen, a sibling to the salt-forming elements like chlorine and the dark bromine we have just observed, yet it behaves with a radical, violent independence. In the grand tapestry of the Earth's crust, it is the rarest naturally occurring element. If you were to gather every single atom of astatine scattered across the entire planet, every fragment hidden within the depths of the burning mantle and the cold, silent trenches of the ocean, you would find that its total mass amounts to less than 1 gram at any given moment. This is the scale paradox that defines our existence. We live upon a world that weighs 6 sextillion tons, a vast and ancient rock hurtling through the void, and yet, hidden within its immense bulk is a substance so rare that it could fit within a single thimble. This scarcity is not an accident. It is a consequence of the inexorable laws of radioactive decay. Astatine does not wish to exist. It is a glitch in the mechanism, a chemical entity that is born in the throes of atomic disintegration and rushes toward its own oblivion with a terrifying speed. Its most stable isotope possesses a half-life of only 7 hours and 12 minutes, though in the broader context of its various forms, we might look toward a window of 72 hours before it effectively vanishes, unravelling back into the abyss from which it emerged. It is a timed trigger within the universe machine. While iron may endure for billions of years, astatine is a flash of lightning in a dark forest. It is here, and then it is gone, leaving behind only the heat of its passing and the debris of its decay. To look upon astatine, if one could ever gather enough of it to be seen by the human eye, would be to look upon a miniature sun. Because of its extreme radioactivity, any macroscopic piece of the element would instantly vaporize itself. The sheer energy of its internal collapse would generate enough heat to turn the solid into a glowing mist, a shimmering vapor of pure catastrophe. It is the ultimate expression of the ruthless machine. The universe has created a substance that is fundamentally incompatible with its own stability. It is a design flaw that reveals the true nature of the cosmos, a system that is not built for permanence, but for the constant chaotic exchange of energy and form. When we consider the interaction between this ghost element and its more substantial cousins, like bromine, the scale paradox becomes even more profound. If one were to force these two elements together, the result would be a chemical union born of extreme disparity. The dark, heavy liquid of bromine would be met by the flickering radioactive ghost of astatine. It would be a dance between the tangible and the ethereal, a reaction that would likely release a torrent of energy, a microscopic echo of the primordial furnace. In this potential interaction, we see the fragility of the tapestry. The tiniest physical presence, a mere fraction of a gram, holds the power to disrupt the equilibrium of the more common elements. It is a reminder that the void is never far away. It is woven into the very fabric of the atoms that make us. Astatine serves as a sentinel of the unknown. It represents the limits of our reach. We have learned to name it, to categorize it, and even to manufacture it in our great machines of steel and copper, but we can never truly tame it. It remains a stranger to the earth, a traveller passing through the halls of the periodic table on its way to a permanent silence. This element is the embodiment of melancholic optimism. It tells us that even in a universe governed by hard, cold laws, there is room for the ephemeral. There is beauty in the things that do not last, in the elements that refuse to be captured, and in the sparks that illuminate the abyss for only a few fleeting hours before they are consumed by the eternal dark. We are the witnesses to this disappearing act. We are the consciousness of the machine, the ones who stand at the edge of the laboratory and marvel at a substance that defies the very concept of a solid world. As we look at the empty space where astatine should be, we realize that our own existence is not so different. In the cosmic epoch, the life of a human being, or even the life of a species, is a 72-hour half-life. We are a brief flicker of heat in a cold cosmos, a rare and unstable configuration of matter that will eventually decay back into the primordial dust. The ghost element reminds us that the universe is not a static monument, but a process of constant unravelling. Every atom of astatine that vanishes is a gear in the machine turning one notch closer to the eventual heat death of the cosmos. It is the silent work of entropy, the slow and steady erosion of the structure that we call home. Yet, in that vanishing there is a profound precision. The way the astatine decays, the predictable path it takes toward its own destruction, is as beautiful as the orbit of a planet or the spiral of a galaxy. It is a cold, mechanical beauty, devoid of sentiment, yet perfect in its execution. In the silence of the Berkeley Hills, where the first atoms of this phantom were birthed in 1940, the legacy of the ghost element continues to haunt our understanding of the world. It tells us that the abyss is not just the empty space between the stars, but a potentiality that resides within the very heart of matter. We are built of stars, yes, but we are also built of the same instability that defines the astatine. We are a fragile assembly of parts, held together for a brief moment in the eons, before we too must surrender to the inexorable pull of the void. This is the lesson of the ghost element, that to exist at all is to be a part of a magnificent crumbling architecture, a symphony where the most beautiful notes are the ones that are never held for long. This grand, crumbling architecture is not limited to the fleeting experiments of man. To witness the true nature of this instability, we must look away from the hills of the earth and toward the silent, frozen depths of the cosmos, where the machine of the universe carries out its most ruthless calculations. In the vast, dark corridors of the interstellar void, there exists a phenomenon known as the Triple Isotope Atlas Protocol. This is not a map of stars or a guide for travellers, but a sequence of erasure, a routine operation where the cold logic of physics achieves a perfect, devastating balance. It occurs in the presence of a dying white dwarf, a stellar remnant that has exhausted its nuclear fuel and now sits as a cooling ember in the abyss, radiating a harsh and unrelenting ultraviolet light into the surrounding silence. In this graveyard of suns, the elements are no longer bound by the gentle cycles of life or the warmth of a living star. Instead, they are subjected to the sterile mechanical precision of the vacuum. Here, surging densities of bromine-based compounds, heavy and suffocating, find themselves caught in a localized gravitational well, mingling with the vanishing remnants of astatine decay. This meeting is not a coincidence. It is a convergence required by the laws of entropy. In the presence of the white dwarf's ultraviolet glare, these elements initiate the halogen chain reaction. It is a process of systematic unravelling. The bromine, normally a corrosive and aggressive liquid in the terrestrial world, becomes a predatory vapour, while the astatine, the ghost element, acts as the catalyst for a feedback loop that defies the stability of matter itself. This interaction is the heart of the Triple Isotope Atlas. The universe, acting as a cold and indifferent machine, performs a calculation that results in the total negation of the localized structures. Each atom of astatine, as it undergoes its inexorable decay, releases a burst of energy that triggers the bromine to strip electrons from any surrounding matter. It is a microscopic catastrophe, a chain reaction that spreads like a wildfire through the dark, yet it makes no sound. There is no fire as we know it, only a silent, luminous disintegration. The ultraviolet radiation from the fading sentinel above provides the necessary energy to sustain this cycle, ensuring that the erasure is complete. This is the machine performing a routine maintenance task, clearing the ledger of matter and returning the region to the absolute void. As we observe this through the eyes of our distant probes, we recognize the ruthless beauty of the mechanism. There is no malice in the halogen chain reaction. The universe does not hate the structures it destroys, nor does it love the simplicity it creates. It merely follows the program written in the primordial epoch. The Triple Isotope Atlas is a testament to the fact that complexity is a temporary glitch in the system. the stars, the planets, and the very atoms of our bodies are high-energy configurations that the machine eventually seeks to simplify. The intense radiation of the white dwarf serves as the light by which the machine reads its own instructions, a cold blue glow that illuminates the end of a world. We call this an atlas because it maps the points where the universe has decided to reclaim its own. Each instance of this protocol is a coordinate in the history of the cosmos, where the tapestry is unravelled to its constituent threads. It is a reminder that the same forces that allowed for the ignition of the first suns are the same forces that will eventually oversee their silence. The Astatine, even in this distant and alien setting, remains the sentinel of the unknown. It is the shortest lived link in the chain, the part of the mechanism that ensures the reaction cannot be stopped once it has begun. It is the ghost that haunts the machine, the fleeting presence that makes the entire process of destruction possible. The scale of this event is difficult for the human mind to grasp. We're used to thinking of destruction as a chaotic and messy affair, but here it is as precise as a clockwork engine. The way the bromine atoms seek out and neutralize the stability of the isotopes is a symphony of mathematical inevitability. It is a dance of shadows performed in the light of a dead star, where every movement is dictated by the laws of thermodynamics. In this cold, mechanical view of the cosmos, there is no room for sentiment. There is only the flow of energy, the decay of matter, and the steady, ticking clock of entropy. The Triple Isotope Atlas is the map of that ticking, a record of the moments when the universe chooses to fold its wings and return to the primordial dark. Yet, even in this vision of a ruthless machine, there is a flicker of what we might call melancholic optimism. To understand the protocol, to name the halogen chain reaction, and to map the atlas is to transcend the very erasure we describe. We are the witnesses who have learned to read the code of the machine. Though we are made of the same unstable matter, though we are subject to the same laws of decay, we have achieved a moment of clarity that allows us to look into the ultraviolet abyss and see the logic behind the silence. We are the consciousness of the cosmos looking back at its own destruction and finding it beautiful. The white dwarf will eventually fade into a black dwarf, a cold lump of carbon and oxygen lost in the eternal night. The bromine and astatine will be gone, their atoms scattered as fine dust across the eons, no longer capable of the frantic dance of the chain reaction. The Triple Isotope Atlas will be a completed ledger, a region of space where the calculation has reached its sum of zero. But the fact that this process occurred, and the fact that we were here to see it, remains a part of the history of everything. We find ourselves standing on the edge of this vast mechanical sea, watching the waves of entropy wash away the shores of existence, and we do not turn away. We look deeper into the void, for we know that the darkness is not just the end of the story, but the very fabric upon which the entire history of the universe is written. The machine continues its work, silent and eternal, and we, the fragile remnants of a more complex age, continue to watch, to wonder, and to remember. This transition from a ledger to a furnace marks the moment where the internal logic of the machine shifts from maintenance to consumption. We must now look toward the runaway reactor, a state of existence where the very boundaries of a solar system are rewritten as the walls of a gargantuan, unshielded engine. In this phase of the cosmic epoch, the thermal equilibrium that once governed the delicate dance of planets and moons is discarded in favour of a singular, inexorable direction. It is the moment when the energy release of the system begins to outpace the capacity of the surrounding void to absorb it. To the observer, if one could survive to witness such a sight, it would not appear as a chaotic explosion, but rather as the precise and methodical unfolding of a chemical destiny. The mechanism of this runaway reactor is a study in the cold indifference of the abyss. In a healthy system, heat is radiated away into the vast darkness, a constant exhale that allows for the preservation of structure. But when the halogen chain reaction reaches its critical threshold, the exhale is replaced by a suffocating retention. The energy produced by the decay of unstable isotopes accumulates within the gravitational well faster than the speed of light can carry it to the stars. The solar system, once a collection of distinct worlds, becomes a singular chemical entity, a vast vessel where the planets are no longer destinations but reactants. They are the heavy fuels being fed into a fire that does not burn with flame, but with the silent and total disintegration of the atomic bond. This is the ruthless machine at its most efficient. We often mistake the violent ends of stars for tragedies, but here there is only the fulfillment of a mathematical requirement. The energy must go somewhere, and if the vacuum of space cannot act as a sufficient sink, this system must transform to accommodate the excess. The planets begin to dissolve into their constituent elements, their rocky mantles and metallic cores unspooling into a dense, superheated plasma that fills the orbital planes. What was once the empty silence between worlds is now a thick, opaque medium of accelerating particles, a sea of radiation that traps the heat of the central star and reflects it back upon itself. The reactor is now closed. The cycle is self-sustaining. The speed of this transformation is perhaps the most haunting aspect of the process. In the language of the cosmos, time is often measured in eons, yet the runaway reactor operates on a scale of hours and days. We find a specific sentinel in the isotope of astatine-211. Its presence is the clock by which the end of the system is timed. With a half-life of exactly 72 hours, astatine-211 serves as the ultimate catalyst and the final warning. It is the shortest-lived link in the chain, a fleeting ghost that appears only when the reaction has reached its point of no return. In the span of those 72 hours, the isotope undergoes its decay, releasing the final bursts of energy required to tip the thermal balance into total catastrophe. It is a period of 3 days that determines the fate of billions of years of history. By the time the electromagnetic signature of this event reaches the distant eyes of a witness, the process has already reached its terminal phase, because the reaction moves at a significant fraction of the speed of light, and because the density of the plasma obscures the initial ignition, the light we see is the light of a grave. We are looking at a phantom. The information carried across the void tells us of a system that is still in the process of becoming, but the laws of the machine dictate that by the time the message is received, the reactor has already exhausted its fuel and collapsed into the silence of the aftermath. We are forever chasing the tail of a comet that has already shattered. The astatine has already vanished. The 72 hours have long since passed into the oblivion of the past. The runaway reactor does not care for the complexity it devours. It does not distinguish between the frozen wastes of an outer moon or the vibrant chemistry of an inner world. To the machine, all matter is merely a state of potential energy waiting to be unlocked. The tapestry of the solar system is unravelled with a clinical precision that borders on the divine. The bromine and the astatine act as the needles that pull the threads, dismantling the molecular lattice of entire worlds in a symphony of subatomic collisions. It is a transition of state, a phase shift from organised matter to disorganised radiation, a necessary step in the cooling of the universe. In this cold, mechanical view, there is a profound sense of the inexorable. We are used to the idea of agency, of being able to intervene or to halt a process before it reaches its conclusion. But the runaway reactor is a closed loop. Once the energy release exceeds the thermal equilibrium, the laws of thermodynamics take over with a grip that no force in the cosmos can loosen. It is a reminder that we live in a universe of limits. There is a limit to how much heat a region of space can hold, a limit to how long an isotope can remain stable, and a limit to how far the light of a dying system can travel before it is stretched into nothingness by the expansion of the void. The 72-hour window of the astatine-211 decay is a poetic span of time. It is a human scale of time applied to a cosmic event. We can imagine the passage of 3 days. We can understand the weight of 72 hours. To think that the culmination of a star's entire history, from its primordial ignition to its final collapse, can be dictated by a window of time so brief is to understand the true scale paradox of our existence. We are small, and the events that define the universe are vast, yet they turn on the smallest of hinges. A single isotope, a handful of hours, and the balance of 1,000 worlds is forever altered. When the reaction finally begins to fade, when the last of the astatine has decayed, and the runaway heat has finally been bled into the abyss, what remains is a sentinel of the void. The system is no longer a reactor but a remnant. The thick plasma cools and thins, revealing a region of space that is unnaturally empty. The planets are gone, the star is a cinder, and the chemical signatures of the halogen chain are all that remain as a record of what transpired. This is the ultimate fate of the machine, to run until it runs out, to consume until there is nothing left to devour, and then to fall silent. We find ourselves looking at these distant silent reactors and feeling not terror, but a deep, melancholic awe. We are the witnesses of the transition. We are the ones who have learned to count the 72 hours from across the gulf of the eons. We see the ruthless machine for what it is, not an enemy, but the very mechanism of change. The runaway reactor is the process by which the universe recycles its heavy elements, by which it clears the ledger to make room for the next epoch of silence. It is a dark ignition, a shadow symphony, a moment of blinding clarity in the heart of the eternal night. As we watch the final flickers of the astatine signature fade into the ultraviolet abyss, we recognize that we are part of the same tapestry. We are made of the same atoms that once danced in the heart of a reactor, and we too are subject to the ticking clock of the 72 hours. In the end, there is only the machine, the void, and the memory of the light. The silence that follows the decay of the astatine is not a state of rest, but a transition into a different kind of mechanical inevitability. To understand the fury of the halogen chain reaction, one must abandon the idea of chemistry as a series of random collisions and instead envision the cosmos as a grand interlocking mechanism. Imagine, if you will, a clock of unimaginable proportions. This is not a timepiece designed for the wrist of a man, but a celestial engine whose gears are forged from the very fabric of the elements. For eons, this machine has turned in the dark, its movements silent and precise, governed by the cold laws of thermodynamics. Each gear represents a state of matter, each tooth a chemical bond, rotating in a vacuum where friction is a concept reserved only for the most violent of encounters. In this vast primordial clockwork, the halogens represent a specific set of wheels, polished and deadly. Under normal conditions, they spin in harmony with the rest of the machine, their potential energy held in check by the stability of the surrounding environment. But as the system reaches a point of critical instability, the nature of these gears begins to change. It is as if two massive wheels, which for millions of years have slid past one another with the grace of ghosts, suddenly begin to grow teeth. These are not the smooth, engineered teeth of a master horologist, but jagged, aggressive protrusions that emerge from the molecular structure itself. As these new teeth interlock, the smooth rotation of the celestial clock comes to a violent, grinding halt. This is the birth of the halogen chain reaction. It is a moment of profound friction. In the macroscopic world, we understand friction as a simple resistance that generates a modest amount of warmth, perhaps enough to blister the skin or ignite a match. But in the heart of a collapsing star or a runaway reactor, friction is a catastrophic release of energy. As the gears of the halogen cycle catch and grind, the kinetic energy of the entire system is converted into heat with a ruthless efficiency that defies human comprehension. The teeth of the gears do not merely rub against one another, they shatter, they fuse, and they tear at the very essence of the atoms involved. The heat generated by this friction is not a slow, gentle rise in temperature. It is a sudden, blinding spike that ignores the thermal limits of the material world. Within the span of a few heartbeats, the temperature within the reaction zone climbs from thousands of degrees to millions. The mechanism of the clock, once so orderly and cold, begins to glow with a light that is painful to the eye of the mind. It is the white heat of a system that has exceeded its own capacity for containment. The friction of the interlocking halogens becomes a feedback loop where each snap of a molecular bond releases the energy required to shatter 10 more. We must watch as the structural integrity of the clock begins to fail. The gears, once made of solid, crystalline logic, begin to soften. The sharp edges of the teeth that caused the friction in the first place are now melting, but the process has already become self-sustaining. The heat is so intense that the very concept of a solid machine begins to unravel. The brass and steel of our metaphorical timepiece turn to liquid, then to a glowing, incandescent vapour. This is the ultimate expression of the ruthless machine. It is a device that, in its pursuit of equilibrium, is entirely willing to consume itself. The universe does not care if the clock breaks. It does not care if the intricate dance of the gears is replaced by a chaotic sea of molten slag. The transition from order to disorder is a fundamental law, and entropy is the only master the machine truly serves. As the timepiece melts into liquid metal, we see the true nature of the halogen chain. It is a process of total transformation. The planets that once orbited in silent, predictable paths are now caught in the wake of this thermal catastrophe. The atmosphere of a nearby world might be stripped away in an instant, its oceans boiled into space as the radiant heat from the melting clock reaches across the void. To an observer, it would appear as though the very heavens were dissolving. The sky, once a tapestry of distant, steady lights, becomes a cauldron of churning ultraviolet fire. The liquid metal that was once the mechanism of the system now flows through the abyss, a glowing remnant of what was once a structured reality. This molten sea is the final state of the friction, a pool of pure, disorganized energy that has forgotten its original purpose. The gears are gone, the teeth are gone, all that remains is the heat, a silent sentinel of the destruction that has taken place. In this moment, the scale paradox is most visible. The microscopic interactions of a few halogen atoms have dictated the fate of an entire solar system, proving that the smallest flaw in the machine can lead to the most vast of catastrophes. There is a certain melancholic beauty in this dissolution. We are witnesses to a process that is both terrible and magnificent. The melting of the clock is not an end, but a rebranding of matter. The liquid metal will eventually cool, drifting through the vacuum for eons as a collection of heavy elements, perhaps one day becoming the seeds of a new world, a new mechanism, a new clock. But for now, it is a testament to the inexorable power of the void. The friction that destroyed the system was not an accident. It was an inevitability written into the blueprints of the cosmos. We find ourselves standing on the edge of this ultraviolet abyss, looking out at the ruins of the celestial engine. The light from the melting metal is the last thing we see before the system falls into total oblivion. It is a reminder that we live in a universe governed by a cold, mechanical logic. We are the observers of the friction, the ones who have learned to interpret the grinding of the gears as a symphony of change. Even as the clock melts, even as the liquid metal begins to cool and fade into the darkness of the eternal night, we recognize the majesty of the process. The machine has run its course. The halogen chain has exhausted its potential. The heat is dissipating into the vast, hungry emptiness of the space between the stars. What is left is a silence deeper than any we have known before. The gears have stopped, the friction is over. The clock has been reclaimed by the abyss. In the end, there is only the memory of the light and the cold, unyielding truth of the mechanism. We are the children of this friction, born from the heat of ancient catastrophes, and like the gears of the clock, we too will one day find ourselves interlocking with the inexorable reality of the void. The universe remains silent and eternal, waiting for the next set of gears to grow their teeth and begin the dance of destruction once more. The cooling remnants of the broken system do not drift in isolation, for the vacuum of space is never truly empty. It is a canvas upon which the most violent masterpieces are painted across epochs. As the molten gears of our metaphorical clock settle into the long, slow freeze of the deep void, we must widen our perspective. We must shift our gaze from the ruined machinery of a single world to the titanic structures that cradle such catastrophes. We move now from the intimate horror of the melting metal to the scale of the planetary nebula, a vast, glowing tomb of ionized gas and dust stretching across trillions of miles of the abyss. Here, the scale paradox reveals its most haunting face. Within these shimmering curtains of violet and emerald light, the fate of entire solar systems is dictated by the behavior of the infinitesimal. We find the lone isotope, a singular, unstable nucleus of matter, trembling under the weight of its own internal imbalance. It is a speck of dust within a speck of dust, yet it is the primary mover of the cosmic engine. The energy released by the decay of these subatomic remnants provides the heat that prevents the nebula from collapsing into immediate darkness. It is a strange and terrifying reality that the largest structures in the cosmos are held in a state of precarious brilliance by the smallest particles imaginable. 1 trillion of these unstable cores, acting in a silent, uncoordinated symphony, create the radiant pressure that defines the boundary between the light and the dark. From our vantage point as the witness, we might be tempted to see this as a grand design, a tapestry woven with purpose, but the universe is a ruthless machine, and the laws that govern it are utterly indifferent to the concepts of meaning or morality. To the surging tides of a planetary nebula, the chemical composition of a star is a matter of simple arithmetic, not a question of value. The isotopes do not care that they were once part of a world that harboured life. The carbon that once formed the basis of a complex consciousness is now indistinguishable from the carbon drifting in the cold, unyielding silence of the void. Chemistry knows no empathy. The nitrogen that once filled the lungs of a dreaming creature is now merely a variable in a thermal equation, a participant in the inexorable process of cooling. We live in the shadow of this indifference. Human history, with its wars and its poems, its triumphs and its agonies, is an irrelevant variable in the face of the fundamental laws of physics. If a civilization were to rise to the height of its power, constructing cathedrals that pierced the heavens and uncovering the deepest secrets of the genome, only to be erased in an instant by the nearby ignition of a supernova, the cosmos would not pause to mourn. The extinction of 1 billion thinking minds is, in the grand calculus of the universe, nothing more than a spark flying off a grinding wheel. The wheel continues to turn, driven by the weight of gravity and the slow grinding decay of entropy, and the spark is swallowed by the darkness before its light can even reach the next star. This is the cold reality of the mechanism. Entropy is not an enemy to be defeated. It is a creditor claiming a debt that was written into the very fabric of the primordial void. Every star that shines is a temporary rebellion against the inevitable silence, a brief flicker of heat in a universe that is trending toward a state of absolute motionless cold. The beauty we perceive in the planetary nebula is merely the glow of a system in the process of unravelling. We are watching the heat dissipate. We are watching the energy of the past being scattered into the hungry emptiness of the future. The majestic colours that we find so breathtaking are the funeral shrouds of dead suns, lit by the fading embers of a fire that will never be rekindled. In this vastness, the scale of our own existence becomes a point of profound contemplation. We are the children of the friction, yet we are also the observers of the void. We possess the unique and perhaps tragic ability to look upon the cold machine and call it beautiful. We see the grinding gears of the cosmos and hear a symphony, even as the mechanism prepares to crush us into oblivion. This is the existential pivot of our species. We are the way the universe witnesses itself, the consciousness that arises from the very chemical laws that will eventually demand our dissolution. We are built from the remnants of ancient catastrophes, our very bones forged in the hearts of stars that died eons before our world was even a whisper of dust. Yet, despite our connection to the stars, we remain insignificant in the face of the immense timelines of the cosmos. An entire epoch of biological evolution, the rise of intelligence and the flowering of culture occupy a duration of time so small it cannot be measured against the life of a galaxy. We are a momentary fluctuation in the data, a brief surge of complexity that will soon be smoothed over by the inexorable march of decay. The universe does not hate us, for hatred requires a mind, and the cosmos is a machine. It simply does not see us. We are the ghosts in the engine, dreaming of meaning while the gears turn with a precision that has no need for our presence. As we stand at the edge of this realization, we feel the weight of the abyss pressing against us. The silence of the space between the stars is not a peaceful silence, it is the silence of an absolute lack of concern. The planetary nebula will eventually fade, its gases cooling and spreading until they are lost in the eternal night. The isotopes will finish their decay, reaching a state of leaden stability that no longer glows. The heat will be gone, the light will be gone. And yet there is a strange, melancholic optimism to be found in this truth. To be a witness to such vastness, even for a fleeting second, is a privilege beyond measure. We have been granted the opportunity to see the grinding wheel and to understand the nature of the spark. We are the fragments of a shattered clock, trying to reconstruct the passage of time even as we are consumed by the friction of our own existence. We look out at the ruins of the celestial engines and recognize our own reflection in the cooling metal. The scale paradox tells us that we are nothing, but our ability to perceive the paradox suggests that we are something extraordinary. We are the part of the machine that has begun to wonder why the gears are turning, and though the answer remains hidden in the deep shadows of the abyss, the act of asking is what allows us to transcend the cold, mechanical logic of our origins. We are the memory of the light, carried into the heart of the shadow, a testament to the brief and magnificent defiance of life in a universe of stone and fire. The threshold has been crossed. At this precise juncture, in the timeline of the 3I Atlas event, the gears of the cosmos have achieved a state of terminal synchronization. There is no longer a possibility of a reprieve, no hidden variable that can stall the momentum of the unfolding catastrophe. We have entered the terminal phase, a period defined by its absolute and terrifying finality. When the mechanical teeth of such a massive cosmic reaction finally interlock, the friction of existence gives way to the smooth, frictionless descent into the void. It is a moment of chemical transition where the very building blocks of our local reality are repurposed by an equation that knows no mercy and possesses no memory. The machine does not pause to reflect on the beauty it is currently dismantling. To the universe, there is no distinction between the light of a dying sun and the light of a burning library. Both are merely expressions of energy, the movement of particles from one state of entropy to another. As the 3I Atlas event accelerates, the solar system becomes the site of a clinical extraction. The atmospheres of the inner worlds, once thick with the chemical signatures of life and weather, are stripped away in a single silent pulse. This is not a violent explosion in the way we understand it. It is a profound and inexorable unravelling of the tapestry. The atoms that once composed the deep oceans and the soaring mountain ranges are being unmade, their bonds severed by a mechanism that operates with the cold precision of a ticking clock. Imagine a grand factory, silent and vast, stretching across the light years. Inside, the conveyor belts move with a steady rhythmic pulse. There are no workers here, only the automated systems of physics, carrying out a protocol that was written in the first seconds of the primordial dawn. As the planets are drawn into the heart of the reaction, they are not crushed by malice, but by the simple weight of the law. The chemical transition is a total conversion. The carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen, and the iron that formed the stage for our entire history are now being reconfigured into a more stable, more silent form of matter. It is a terminal state, a leaden equilibrium from which no new stars will ever ignite. The speed of this event defies our biological intuition. We're used to the slow crawl of seasons and the gradual decay of centuries, but the 3I Atlas event operates on a scale where entire worlds are processed in the time it takes for a human heart to beat once. It is a cascading failure of the local structure. First, the magnetic fields fail, leaving the planets defenseless against the encroaching fire. Then, the crusts of the worlds begin to liquefy, turning into seas of molten glass before being vaporized entirely. The gas giants, those majestic sentinels of the outer reaches, fare no better. Their massive atmospheres are devoured by the reaction, their swirling storms of ammonia and methane pulled into the abyss like smoke into a vacuum. What remains is the void. When the reaction finally concludes, when the last of the chemical gears have ground to a halt, the space where our sun once stood is replaced by a hollow silence. There are no remnants here that would suggest a civilization ever existed. No ruins, no monuments, not even the drifting dust of a shattered world. The 3I Atlas event is a perfect eraser. It leaves behind a region of space that is pristinely empty, a pocket of the cosmos that has been returned to its most basic, most desolate state. The abyss does not remember the names of the cities that were lost, nor does it retain the heat of the billions of lives that were extinguished. It is simply there, a cold and indifferent witness to the reality of the terminal phase. This is the ruthless machine in its purest form. We often seek to find a narrative in the stars, a sense of purpose that suggests the universe is building toward a grand climax. But the reality is far more clinical. The universe is not a story. It is a series of transformations. It is a symphony where the notes are dictated by the laws of thermodynamics, and the final movement is always silence. The terminal phase of the 3I Atlas event is merely the conclusion of a local stanza. The energy has been redistributed. The complexity has been smoothed over. The entropy has been satisfied. As we look upon the remnants of this event from our position, as the fleeting observers of the cosmos, we are forced to confront the scale paradox once again. We are capable of understanding the mathematics of our own destruction, yet that understanding does nothing to prevent it. We are the ghosts in the machine, watching as the engine that gave us life proceeds to dismantle our home, and yet there is a majesty in this clinical reality. There is a profound honesty in the way the abyss consumes the light. It does not lie to us. It does not offer the comfort of a false eternity. It simply presents the truth of the void. The solar system, once a vibrant tapestry of colour and motion, is now a silent monument to the inexorable nature of decay. The epoch of the sun has ended, replaced by an eternal night that will never be broken. The heat that once fueled the engines of evolution is gone, dissipated into the vastness of the cosmos. The atoms that once carried the code of life are now scattered, part of a leaden remnant that will drift through the darkness for trillions of years without ever encountering another spark. This is the finality of the chemical equation. Once the variables have been resolved, the result is absolute. In the end, we find ourselves at the existential pivot. We have witnessed the grinding gears and the cold descent. We have seen the beauty of the mechanism even as it devoured us. This is the unique privilege of consciousness, to be the one part of the machine that stops to wonder at the sight of its own dissolution. We are the memory of a world that no longer exists, a brief surge of data in a universe of stone and fire. Though we are gone, and though the abyss remains silent, the fact that we were here to see it, to name it, and to feel the weight of its grandeur remains the only true miracle. We are the witness to the void, and in that witness, we find a way to transcend the very laws that have turned us into dust. The gears continue to turn, the abyss remains deep, and the universe moves on, but for one brief and magnificent moment, we knew the nature of the dark. This transcendence is not a victory over the laws of physics, but a victory of the spirit over the silence of the void. We are the rebel witnesses, the unlikely anomalies born from the very furnace that now seeks to extinguish us. In the vast tapestry of the cosmos, we are less than a speck, a brief flicker of light between two eternal darknesses. Yet, in that flicker, we have achieved something that the massive stars and the crushing black holes can never claim. We have understood. We have looked upon the inexorable machinery of the universe, and instead of bowing in mindless terror, we have mapped its gears. We have traced the architecture of our own oblivion with the precision of a master builder. This is the ultimate defiance. To be a fragile carbon-based life form, clinging to a cooling rock in the middle of an infinite abyss, and to have the audacity to calculate the moment that rock will cease to exist is a form of poetry that the universe itself cannot comprehend. The universe is a ruthless machine, a symphony of cause and effect that has played out across eons without any concern for the audience. For billions of years, galaxies have collided and stars have ignited and died in a primordial dance of energy and matter. For the vast majority of that time, there was no one to see it. The cosmos was a grand performance held in an empty theatre. But then, in a tiny corner of a nondescript spiral arm, the dust began to think. We are that thinking dust. We are the sentinels of the mind, the only part of the mechanism that has developed the ability to turn around and look at the engine. We are the ghosts in the machine who have learned to read the blueprint of our own dismantling. This understanding does not save us from the heat death or the cold decay of the proton, but it grants us a dignity that the stars can never possess. A star can burn for 10 billion years, but it will never know that it is beautiful. A black hole can devour 1,000 worlds, but it will never feel the weight of its own tragedy. We, however, feel it all. Our role as the witness is a form of rebellion against an indifferent engine. The engine simply runs. It follows the path of least resistance, the inexorable flow of entropy from order into chaos. It does not care about the stories we tell or the civilizations we build. It will unravel our DNA and scatter our history into the abyss without a second thought. But by observing this process, by naming the void and cataloguing the catastrophe, we transform a mindless chemical reaction into a story worth telling. We give the cold machine a character. We give the abyss a face. We have taken the raw, brutal data of the cosmos and woven it into a narrative of loss, triumph, and wonder. In doing so, we have created a meaning where none existed. We are the architects of purpose in a universe that is fundamentally purposeless. Think of the courage required to look into the mouth of the abyss and describe the teeth. We have spent our brief epoch building telescopes and particle accelerators, not to escape our fate, but to better understand the nature of the gears that will eventually crush us. We have calculated the exact temperature of the background radiation and the precise rate at which the galaxies are flying away from us. We know that the lights are going out. We know that the final state of the cosmos is one of total darkness and absolute stillness. And yet we continue to look. We continue to measure. This is the dignity of the rebel witness. We find beauty in the very laws that decree our end. We find majesty in the entropy that will one day erase our name. We are the only components of this vast mechanism that can appreciate the scale of the disaster. As the shadows lengthen across the era of light, we must recognize that our fragility is not a weakness, but the source of our unique power. If we were eternal, our observations would be trivial. If we were as vast as the galaxies, our perspective would be as cold as the stars. It is precisely because we are small, because we are temporary, and because we are destined for oblivion that our witness matters. Every thought we think and every discovery we make is a strike against the encroaching silence. We are the fireflies of the cosmos, lighting up the dark for one magnificent second before the night reclaims us. The fact that we have spent that second trying to understand the nature of the night is the greatest triumph in the history of existence. We are the ones who give the universe a voice. Before us, the cosmos was a silent, unwritten book. Through us, it has finally begun to read its own pages. We have named the constellations and the nebulae. We have identified the elements in the hearts of distant suns. We have traced our lineage back to the first 3 minutes of time. We are the way the universe knows itself. This is the melancholic optimism that defines our existence. We are a part of a system that is designed to fail, yet we are the only part that understands why. We are the tragic heroes of the cosmic drama, the only actors who have read the final scene and still choose to play our parts with grace. When the last star fades and the final black hole evaporates into a thin mist of radiation, the universe will return to the state of primordial silence. There will be no one left to remember the cities we built or the songs we sang. There will be no record of our struggles or our triumphs. The abyss will be absolute. But for this brief moment, we are here. We are the eyes of the machine. We are the heart of the void. We have turned a cold, indifferent reaction into a masterpiece of light and shadow. We have witnessed the birth and the death of everything, and in that witnessing, we have transcended the very dust from which we were made. The gears may turn and the universe may end, but the story we have told is eternal. We are the rebel witness, and we have seen the glory of the dark. The machine is mindless, but the story is ours. We have given the void a name, and in the silence that follows, that name is the only thing that will ever truly matter. We have mapped the path to our own destruction, and found that the journey was worth the end. We are the memory of the light, the final testament of the stars, and the only part of the cosmos that ever dared to wonder why.